This episode is brought to you by Muntins Malts, a company that is passionate about providing premium malts to brewers worldwide. For over a century, Muntins has been a leading supplier of brewing and distilling malts, offering the finest British malted barley on the market. You can experience the difference Muntins offers by joining a recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club, because every kit that ships out now includes premium Muntins malt. You know, we've known the Muntins crew for a long time, and I can tell you, friend, you're going to love brewing with their grains. Ask your local supply shop to carry Muntins malts, or homebrewers can join our Trub Club at homebrewhappyhour.com/club. Be a part of the community and come brew with us. Thank you, Muntins, for supporting our efforts and homebrewers worldwide. Today's show is brought to you by hopsdirect.com. Grown in the esteemed Yakima Valley on the Peterball family farm, hopsdirect.com offers the widest variety of hops available online at incredibly competitive pricing. It's simple. They grow hops, they sell hops, and they ship hops straight from their family-owned farm to your doorstep. Producing the highest quality hops is hopsdirect.com's passion, and they're proud to be an independent grower in the craft beer industry. Go to hopsdirect.com right now and get what you need to make your brew day better. That's hopsdirect.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Brewing award-winning beer at the highest level. An interview with the AHA's 2025 Homebrewer of the Year, Wayne Doucette. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 446. Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. And if you, my friend, have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you could go to homebrewhappyhour.com. You can email Joshua at homebrewhappyhour.com. Even better, call it in. Leave a voicemail at 325-305-6107. When I use your voicemail on a future episode, you will get yourself a gift card to kegconnection.com. I am your host, Joshua Stubing, and I'm so happy. I got to start this by saying I'm not happy Todd and James don't do the show as much. I'm not. That makes me sad. But what I am happy about is all the guests I've been able to bring in this year and introduce y'all to, and me myself meet and learn more from. Really, this whole show is just about me learning from people and all that. So with that being said, my guest today, Wayne Doucette, he is the 3-time gold champ this year at the NHC. What is the actual official thing?
It's the NHC finals, so it's a national homebrew competition. So.
National Homebrew Competition finals. He won gold in 3 categories. He's also their Homebrewer of the Year. He's out of Big Lake, Minnesota, member of River City Brewers. Wayne, my friend, thank you so much for your time and for doing the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Josh.
Dude, first off,
it's gonna be fun.
That is very Midwestern behind you. I love it. I love the backdrop. That is like, I feel like you're like, I just tended to the property and came in to do the podcast. That's great. I love it. I did get you after the AHA had you on. Was it a presentation or was it like a Q&A? I forget what they did with you last week.
It kind of was just a background of what we did, kind of explained what we did, and then they would have live questions on it. It was actually live, so it was. I was a little nervous about it. First podcast. This is my
I was
second
just saying,
podcast.
you were telling me this was your second. I was like, yeah, that's right. The AHA had you on. First off, I'm glad the AHA had you on. That's fantastic. Our mutual buddy Adam, who's I think he's a president of your homebrew club now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, El Presidente.
El Presidente. El Patron, we'll have him on a future episode, but he connected us and he was like so ecstatic to get us talking because I mean, you really have, your accolades for this year specifically. I did not do my homework on former years. We'll get to that, but you didn't just place, you got gold in multiple categories, which I'd have to I have their official website here. There's not as many categories as you'd think there'd be. There
was 34 beer categories.
Right. That's what I mean. And in the bigger picture of how many people brew and submit, one person getting gold in more than one is probably an anomaly. I just learned that word. I'm not sure if I'm using it right, but
right. So I ended up, I mean, it's shocked that I did that. I entered 4 beers in Chicago. That has to get qualified. And I got 2 golds, and the American Lager got a 3rd place. And I knew why it got a 3rd place because I was a little nervous about that beer. The International Lager didn't place because I was screwing around with yeast, and I shouldn't have done that. But I took a chance. It didn't pay off. But the American Lager, I knew I was in trouble with that one because it ended up, I used Pearl as the bittering hop, and it just left a bite to it. And so I got judges' feedback from it, and I knew that was a problem. So I ended up changing up the yeast. I brewed it twice just in case. So 2 brews going next to each other, same exact beer, but different bittering hops. One was Tradition and one was Hallertau.
Dude, and again, we'll get into the weeds of it because I love how much, like, I've had a few guys who are very intense and brew with intent for competition, and I just love how you knew immediately, like, oh, like you're sending it off. You're like, oh, I should have done this different or this or that. I'm too dumb to know any different. And like I've said 1,000 times too, I don't enter competitions. It's cheaper for me to just make the trophy and put it up in my office. So it's like because nobody in my area knows. They're like, oh my God, you're the global best brewer award. Yeah, man. Yeah. The global best brewer. We, it was a 10,000 entries and and it says it on the placard. Look, #1 dad, anyways, but before we get into the competition and all the gold and the recipes that you did for that, let's start from the beginning. Your history as a home brewer. I'm fascinated again by people who don't just brew beer and that wins, but consistently can brew beer that wins. So let's talk about, when did you start brewing and what got you into the idea of wanting to make your own beer at home?
So, it was about 25 years ago. I started getting into craft beer, and for me, craft beer at that time was Newcastle Brown Ale. Pretty, think about it
it's
now.
Not bad.
It was good at the time. You couldn't hardly get anything, and I was working too much. And my wife said, she got me like this last minute Christmas gift, and it was a generic brewing kit from Walmart. It was horrible. It had a collapsible fermenter.
Yeah.
It was about a gallon, and I made that beer, and it just was so bad I dumped it.
What was the style? Do you remember?
I have no idea. I'm guessing cream ale.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. You had the instructions, you put it together, and I looked at it. I put it down on my workbench in the basement. I thought, what the hell is this thing supposed to do? I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So then I went and went to a local homebrew place and got a smack pack and rebrewed it with a full smack pack in that gallon. And it was just as bad. It was just horrible. So I was going to give up. And then a friend of mine, Kenny from work, said, hey, why don't we do a brew on premises? And then we did a Scotch ale there, and Scottish ale. And it turned out really nice. And then I was hooked. Then I bought a kit and I went from there. But I didn't do all grain until 2010.
Oh, wow. So you had a long run.
Yeah, the beers were just terrible because I didn't know what I was doing. I read the instructions, followed the instructions. Yeah. The instructions, I think, were wrong. I had a like a chip on my shoulder with dry yeast. I kept reading that dry yeast was inferior. I have since changed my mind. It's awesome yeast, by the way. And so I ended up pitching without oxygen, and I ended up with phenolics. So I just about gave up, and then I decided the reason I had the phenolics is because I was doing extract, which is completely wrong. And at that time, I switched and started using pure oxygen, and I went to uh, using starters, and then I went all grain all at once. So it was like a massive change, which I don't recommend doing. But it when I got done with the beer, I've never made a beer like that. It was like so good. It was like it was dry. I mean, most of my other beers were under attenuated. So from that point on, then I just started doing all grain, and and I designed and built my own rim system at the time too. So that was kind of a big deal.
Wait, so
And that
before the rim system though, you was it stovetop? I mean, I know you said you brewed on premise. Was it just a kettle
Well, we
on a
did one
burner?
beer on premise. I did one beer on premise, and then I just started getting Northern Brewer kits.
Oh, okay.
So you just get a kit, and it was liquid extract,
Yep.
and you just throw it together, and it would take about maybe 2 hours to brew, if that. And then and then in carboys too. So it was hit or miss. Sometimes it would be really good, and sometimes it'd be really bad, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So it was a long, long, long journey. So
You
for
brewed
me,
and you just prayed it would end up okay.
exactly. It was like you'd pitch that yeast, and you'd white knuckles until you saw it fermenting. And sometimes the fermentation would take forever to start up, and that not realizing that, hey, maybe you didn't use enough yeast, and maybe there wasn't enough oxygen in there. And
But do you
so,
remember so building the rims which I guess, we can kind of explain to people like or you can explain the reasoning behind that as opposed to doing like a Herms or doing some some other outside burner thing. But was the reason that to go to I'm assuming it was an electric rims or was it
yeah,
propane? Right. So electric
yeah.
brewing you're doing I'm assuming for the sake of recirculation and consistency of temperature control and all that.
Temperature control and everything. And I didn't want to use everybody at the time was using those igloo coolers. And I just don't like cooking with plastic. And I thought, I don't want to do that. So I ended up buying a Sabco mash tun. They're Sabco Brew Magic, which I
Yeah,
trying
they're
to think of.
kegels, right? And that's what basically
Yeah,
yeah,
but they're really nice. They do a
yeah.
really nice
Oh,
job of.
super
I
giant.
couldn't afford it at the time. It was $8,000 for the brew system, and I couldn't afford that. So I ended up spending about $600, $700 at the time on just a mash tun, and then I just hand built all the electronics behind it. That's my background, and I had no idea if it was going to work or not. I mean, I dumped a bunch of money into this, but I figured if it didn't work out, I could probably sell that Sabco fairly easily because it was such a good product. So I could probably get half my money out of it. So it was a bit of a risk, but it paid off in spades. So it's
My buddy who he became my buddy, he used to own Homebrew Supply, and when Todd, who's a co-host here, who owns Keg Connection, he had bought Homebrew Supply back in like 2019. At that time, he had since sold it, but when he bought it, the guy had a Sabco, one of the brew matches. That was my first time seeing it in person. You're not kidding, super nice. I don't even know if Sabco's still around. I don't know if they're still making stuff, but those systems are super nice and reliable.
yeah, I think they're around, but they stopped making that product.
Yeah,
But and to this day, I still brew on that same system.
do you? No kidding. So, and that was
Yeah.
that was 2010 when you got it.
2010, so it's been 15 years, and I just kept working at it and working at it to try to get as much as I could out of that system, and then understanding what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. So
And
it was a long journey for me.
So what one of the bullet points I put on here when I'm doing these kind of interviews is asking about, oh, did the batch size change of this? If you're using one of those keggles, were you using it to its capacity in every batch, or were you getting that? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they're like 15 and a half gallons to brim.
Yeah.
And so what
No, the nice thing about the Sapco is that you could go as low as you could probably do a 3 gallon with it because the temperature probe that I put in there is down so low that you can keep a grain bed really shallow. So I was doing mostly 5 gallon at the time. Now I've switched fermenters to Sankey kegs, and so now I'm doing like 8.5, 9 gallon batches, and then leaving quite a bit behind because I leave all the trub behind.
Yeah,
There's no trub
absolutely.
or hops.
And,
So.
oh man, so we're gonna have to talk about that too. You're because I know you do pressure fermentation and you're doing them in Sankey kegs. Man, that we have a lot to go over. But again, we're building the foundation. That's what I do here, storytelling. When was it that then the idea of competition got to you? Like, were you? Well, let me actually preface that first. Were you brewing certain styles that you were just perfecting? People were complimenting it, and then you're like, you know what? Maybe this is good. I should see what judges think. Like, how did that even bug get bit? How'd you get bit by that bug of like, I think my beer is good enough for other people to give me awards?
So it started out with I really liked Newcastle, but I ended up going to Samuel Smith Brown Ale. If you've ever had
Oh,
that,
so good.
it is fabulous.
Yeah.
So I tried just replicating that, and the guys at work gave me so much grief over it. They said that if I should ever be able to brew the perfect brown ale, I would probably flop over and die because I've accomplished everything I could do. But so I ended up doing a Kolsch too, but I kind of like the lighter beers. So I do the brown ale and the Kolsch. And the competition started when my wife said, I'm entering some beer in the local county fair, or entering some things for the kids in the local county fair. Do you want to enter your beer? And I thought, well, I suppose, So I entered a Kolsch. And it's really funny because you had to go back and pick up your bottles back from the from the county fair. And my wife went back there to pick them up, and the two old ladies judged the beer. And as she went to say, "Oh, I'm here to pick up my beer bottles," and she goes, "Did you make this beer?" And she held up the Kolsch, and my wife says, "No, my husband did." She goes, "It was so good, we finished it all."
No way.
And then that's when I was like, "Really?" I was like these people, they could have said it was awful, and they said it was good. So that was my first kind of feedback, but it was just a county fair. So eventually, Jeremy at work, a friend of mine, said there's a handy Andy competition at Harriet Brewing. And so what it was is it was a fundraiser, and you could enter any beer, and the top 3 got to brew that beer at the brewery and serve it at the brewery, which I thought was so cool. So I entered it, and I entered an IPA. And at the time, I didn't know anything about IPAs. I made it with 13, 18, London 3 yeast, and it was horrible. But I entered that brown ale just as a whim. I said, well, I'll just throw the brown ale in there. Well, the brown ale won one of the top categories. And so I ended up brewing there. And then that's when I met Tim Rhodes, who eventually became a professional brewer. But he tasted that Kolsch because I brought it down while we were brewing. I just brought one of my Kolsch's down there, and he tasted it. He goes, "Why aren't you competing with this? This is like a fabulous beer. You really should enter this." And then that's when I realized that maybe I'm getting to that level where I could start competing. So I entered that and the brown ale in the Minnesota State Fair that year, and ended up getting 2 golds.
What year was this?
2000. It's the 2012 is when I started doing that.
Okay, so I'm more offended Adam never told you about our Kolsch cup, because I want to try this incredible Kolsch.
The brewing evolves, right? It eventually just got into lagers, and I got into lagers big time. I love German pills.
I should have had James on. Gosh darn it! I should have brought James on this show. James, if you're watching right now, I deeply apologize, but sorry, c'est la vie. But yeah, you're a man after our own heart, dude. You had me at Kolsch, and then like all the lagers and stuff.
Oh, Kolsch is so good, but I actually think it's one of the most difficult beers to brew.
Amen.
Because you got to get that fruitiness just perfect.
Yep.
And it has to be like this white wine grape character that isn't really sticking out too prominent. But if you look for it, it's there, and yet it disappears, and it's got a nice, crisp, bitter finish. It's delicious.
Yeah, I'm going to formally, we already did our Kolsch Cup this year. I'm going to formally invite you to compete next year. I'm going to bug you. I'm going to bug you about it. It's in May. It's every May, and if you don't compete,
I've heard of it. Yeah. I've heard of it.
If you don't compete, I'm going to be personally offended. It won't last very long.
I don't know. I'm not making any promises. Police or not.
I'm putting you, Johnny, on the spot. You're good. Did you? So, did the competition scene that as you started getting more into it, were you brewing your favorite styles and entering them, or were you trying to perfect multiple styles and seeing how you were doing in a judge's eyes?
So what happened was I was just love that brown ale, and I hardly ever brew it anymore. And I just wanted to brew that. But then, if you know who Christian England is,
Yes.
he stated that if you're going to be a good brewer, you got to be able to do all beers. So I started going down that path, and I don't know that that was right for me. But in the meantime, my wife kept tasting my beers and she goes, I don't like these. I don't like these. And I go, what do you know? And then she gave me a challenge. She goes, I bet you can't brew a beer that I like. And I said, well, what do you want me to brew? And she said, Michelob Golden Draft. And it's like American lager. I said, ah. So then that's when Lynn's Lager was born. And it took me 2 years to be able to get that to where I wanted it. And it started meddling. So I started out with American yeast, and American yeast has got a red apple character to it. And I really didn't care for it, and neither did she. And the judges didn't either. They didn't like it. So out of the blue, a friend of mine at work says, hey, I got these ornamental hops, or these hops I grew. Can you use them in a beer? And I said, I don't know. Like, what do you want me to brew? And he says, well, a light lager. I said, well, okay. So I went home and I was going to use American yeast, and it was bad. I could smell it. It didn't keep. And then I had some 833, some German Bach yeast. I thought, well, Ernie's isn't going to matter to Ernie what yeast I use. I'm just going to use this. It turned out so good. We shipped it off to Reno, Nevada, and I got a gold medal. Just
No
like that.
way.
I said, I'm going to ship this off because this is so good. So that at that point, then I started shifting the idea that maybe American beers don't have to use American yeast. You can use German yeast. And so then that started me on that quest for lagers. And then that blossomed into Hellas's, German pills and Czech pills and Doppelbocks and Dunkels. And it was so cool. I just loved that, to be able to brew a beer like that. And what's really cool is I'm sure there's a lot of homebrewers listening that they have a glass of their own beer and they're just like disbelief that they brewed that beer, and you get that all the time, even to this day.
Absolutely.
I can't believe I made this.
Absolutely. Frequently, I get that. My pop and I just did a Japanese rice lager.
I love those.
Long story short, I was on a cruise earlier this summer, and the beer selection on Carnival's not that great. And so, but at one of the only sushi bar there, they had Asahi Super Dry. I was like, man, I have not had Asahi in forever. Let me get one. It snowballed into my wife thinking I'm an alcoholic. That's a whole different episode, whole different other show. But every time I go back there, the lady be like, "Oh, is it Asahi time?" And I'm like, "It is Asahi time." My pop and I scoured the internet for a few weeks trying to, no one had, everyone that put out a recipe on all the various forums or software or whatever were like, oh, this is kind of close, blah, blah, blah. And no one was confident. So I was like, all right, let me try to find out as much as I can. So we threw together a recipe. Long story short, we started tapping into it not that long ago because I wanted to let it have time to cold condition and clear out and all that. And
right.
Dude, it might be the best batch of beer I've ever brewed. Like when we first tapped into it on a brew day here at my house, crystal clear, crisp, tastes I was just like, this is nuts. Like if I were to give this to someone who had Asahi next to it, they would think that we just poured Asahi into my keg. It nailed it. It was incredible. And
isn't it? That's so awesome.
It's so awesome.
You want to give it away, but at the same time, you want to keep it. You don't want anyone to have it, but then you want to give it away. You're so proud of it.
Exactly. We are officially, so we brew here at my place, but we serve at my pop's because they have property, the space to host and the space for all of our kegerators. And so we have an event coming up on September 20th, which I guess is in a week. And we did a 10-gallon batch, so I have a backup 5er, but we put it on tap at my pop's place, and I'm pretty sure we've gone a lot through it. And so I was telling people who are coming to this party, you get there early. I don't know what to tell you, because there's still another, I always go over there on Sundays to hang out with my parents. I was like, there's still another Sunday before the party, man. I don't know what to tell you. Get there early if you want to try it, but otherwise you'll just have to trust me. It was phenomenal. Because I'm too afraid. I don't want to bring my backup 5-gallon keg over there because it's mine. I don't want to. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. That's why I'm a bad friend. And I was going to say, you're such a good husband. for taking the challenge of brewing a beer. Like my wife, here the joke's on me. My wife can't stand any beer. I'd have to make a homebrewed mojito or something for her to give the thumbs up. Like, oh, that keg of mojito you did is good. Thumbs up. But
Well, I have a weakness for American lager. I mean,
oh yeah, who doesn't?
if you come over to my house, there's a Pap sitting down there. Either
Yay!
me or my son has got a Pap sitting in the fridge all the time.
I love that. That's going to be a clip I'm going to put out because people love to crap on macro beers as if no one's drinking them, even though they're wildly successful, brewing gazillions of gallons of beer every year.
Right. That, like the Japanese rice lager is just, it's basically a variation of American lager. And American lager sells 80% around the world. So it's not like it's a bad beer. I think people just don't realize that you can brew it really well. If you brew it like a German or a Japanese,
Yeah.
they're super clean, super crisp, and just crush them.
I had to make a face because Todd, when I was brewing it, he was like, "Why don't you just brew a Bud Light?" Like he was like giving when I was doing the Asahi, or pardon me, he said Budweiser, pardon me, and I was like, "Well, if you remember their commercials," and I said something about corn, and he reminded me they don't actually use corn. That was their whole campaign. It's just rice adjunct for Bud. And he just tried to shame me for wanting to drink Japanese rice lager, and I told him I was like, "Dude, there's nothing wrong on a hot Central Texas day having a very crisp rice lager. There's nothing better than it. Nothing better. For my money, though, German Pils is my absolute favorite lager, and right close behind it would be a Czech Pils. Like I always have Pilsner or Quell or Czech Var in my fridge. Love both of those. Dunkels, Warsteiner Dunkel, Warsteiner Pils. You could not have picked a better style to hone in on. And I get grief because I frequently brew Kolsch. I frequently consume Kolsch. It's become a topic of conversation with listeners and my wife's therapist. I drink a lot of Kolsch. I love it. But
it's a great beer.
It's a great beer. But people crap on it or crap on me like, oh, you should branch out. No, man, I know what I like. I don't got to change for you. Like that's what I want to drink and that's what I want to have. That's what I'm going to brew. That's what I like.
And there's an advantage to that too, because you like that beer, you know that beer, and you have a passion for it, and you could just nail that beer.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what it was. To get back to the American lager, the beer that won Best of Show at Nationals this year was a rice beer, and that was Lynn's Lager. That's named after my wife, and it's actually made with minute rice, and people are
kidding.
shocked. Yeah, why would you use minute rice? It is the reason I use minute rice is because there's been times when I go to the homebrew store and get flaked rice, and if it's old, it's rancid. You can't use it. But if you go to the grocery store, you get minute rice, and there's no minerals added to it. There's nothing. It's just rice, and you just dump it into the mash. And when you taste the first runnings of the worts, it tastes like rice pudding. It's delicious. And the cold IPA too that won a gold this year at Nationals was made with minute rice as well.
No way.
It's one of the easiest rice, and the reason I like it is because it's easy to use. It keeps a really long time. It's a very consistent product, so that's why I use minute rice.
Let's talk about your brew process as I'm segueing us through all my little bullet point stuff. Now, I mean, like you said, you're brewing on your rim system. You've been doing that for 15 years. I'm bad at math. 15 years and some change.
Yep.
You're brewing on that. What are you doing? You're brewing like you said, 7 or 8 gallon batches. What's your hot side, cold side process, fermentation, like dry versus liquid, whatever you're willing to share? What's been tried and true that has gotten you to be a consistently high performing brewer in the competition scene?
So, people talk a lot about water, but water drives something that people, I don't know why they focus on water. They should be focusing on pH. So I do mostly light beers. I have bad well water. I've got iron in it, so I can't really use it for beer. You can, but you end up with these weird flavors from it, and a lot of it's driven by iron. And I have I think 2 parts per million, and I don't think you can go above a half a part per million of iron, and then it starts affecting the beer. So I use all RO water, and then I treat it. And so everything is driven by the RO water. And since I do lagers, I mash really, really low temperature. So pH with RO water and some calcium sulfate and some calcium chloride, you don't have to do any adjustments to the mash pH. It just lands right where it's supposed to. And it should land at room temperature at 5.6 to 5.5. That's where I want it. And once in a while, it goes on to 5.4. So I watched that really, really close. And that drives the conversion in the mash. And that's really what I'm going after. I'm not really concerned about flavor at that point. I want to give that enzymes, the beta amylase and the alpha amylase, the right pH. And you kind of nail it about 5.6 at room temperature, so that at mash temperature, you're probably closer to 5.4 to 5.3. So, and then that drives the rim system is just constantly circulating. And that I've got the system tuned so well that I typically hit 90 to 95% extraction rate.
What?
Yeah,
That's
normal.
that's
That's normal.
fantastic.
85. If I hit 85, that I hit a problem.
You're
Usually
pissed.
the pH. No, not pissed. I was just like, oh, the pH is off a little bit. Usually a little bit too low is usually what happens. And so then as I do this, um, I don't know where to go with this, but
No, you're good.
you end up sparging with RO water again, but I acidify the RO water as I sparge. So as it goes in there, I'm trying to keep that pH down at about 5.4, maybe a little lower as I sparge. That'll keep you from getting tannic extraction, and it just makes for a really smooth beer. And then when you get done collecting everything and you go ready for boil, then I'll go through and check the pH again, and I'm looking for on a American lager or a Pilsner or one of the other Kolsch even, you're looking for about a 5.1 to 5.15 pH for a boil, and then just let her rip and go from there. But the other thing to watch out for, that should set you up for your pitch pH, and pitch pH should be 5.1. And then that'll give you the right pH for the yeast, because the yeast needs that. The lower the pH, the healthier it is for the yeast. The yeast really likes it best at being pitched at 4.7, but you're not going to get a good beer at that. So you kind of compromise and you give it a 5.1. But every yeast has got a terminal pH that's different. So lager yeast typically lands at about 4.3. If you look at English yeast, they land about the same place. I found that USO5 or Chico strains have a tendency to be about 4.4, and then Kolsch is way down there. I mean, 029 will drop down to 4.9 for
No
pH.
kidding.
Yeah, that's why they're so crisp. They're just delicious, But that sets up the beer then, that whole pH. Now you get back into water treatments, and my idea is that your calcium levels have to be correct for the yeast. The sulfate to chloride ratio, I don't really pay too much attention to that. What I'm really looking for is, what is my level of sulfates? Because if I'm doing a German Pils, I want the sulfate levels up high, and you'll get not so much a crisp finish, but you'll get a mineral character on that finish that is typical German beer, and it blends so well with your noble hops and the malt, and it just like sets that beer off. It's delicious.
And are you a traditionalist in regards to an hour mash and
I do. Yeah, I do. So the mash temperatures on like a lager like that would be setting at about 145, and I'll do it for 90 minutes. And there's arguments that the mash is converted within 20 minutes, but what you're really looking for is, you're looking for that beta amylase enzyme to work, because at that temperature, alpha amylase isn't at its prime temperature. It really wants to be up at 152, but it works slower at 145, and it needs to work first before the beta can finish its job. So technically it is converted, but you could probably produce a more fermentable wort if you just let it set. And the other thing that drives terminal gravity is the yeast. I mean, it's huge. So you can do that same mash with two different yeasts and end up with two different final gravities. So,
absolutely. But on your mash, do you do a mash out, or you're just in the beta?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I step mash. Everything gets step mash. I used to do decoctions. There's so much work, and you know, I don't know that you benefit that much from it. I do use some practices of low dissolve oxygen in the mash, so I will use. It's called Ox Block, and More Beer sells it. And it's basically a mixture of Brutan B, gallitanins, ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and then a little bit of sodium metabisulfite. And it really does seem to keep the color in check. It doesn't, you don't see a color development very much in the mash or in the boil. But there's two reasons for that. One is that it's thought that oxygen is actually being inhibited in the mash, and I think it is. But also, sodium metabisulfite is a it's a bleaching agent for food, and it will lower the color. And then when you boil at lower pHs, that also will inhibit color changes. So the Maillard effects are kind of, they're there, but they don't show up as color. So, and that's part of pH. If you boil at a high pH, your color is going to get pretty dark.
Dude, I have to ask you real quick. It's totally off topic. What is your background? Are you an engineer? Are you a scientist? What are we-
Okay. I'm a technician / engineer. So
No, you know what? I said I was asking a question. I was more making an accusation. I've met your type. I know you're.
That's okay. I've been called worse.
I know your type. We actually, small world. We may have actually met at Homebrew Con 20. You had already told me before we were recording.
I think it was 2016.
Right?
It was in Minneapolis. Yep.
In Minneapolis, and I probably made that joke because we have the homebrewing community has so many engineers and engineer minds.
PhDs,
yeah, totally.
There's PhDs everywhere.
They are.
Like I'm at homebrew competition. And what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a PhD in chemistry or whatever. It's like, and I'm competing against these people, and I'm like, why aren't you just beating me really bad? I don't know why. It's just so
that homebrew con. I was actually there for CM Becker. That was our only booth. Normally we would have like the homebrew shop booth when we were in that business, and the CM Becker booth, we were really pushing this new sanitizer that's now defunct. Not enough people bought it because at Homebrew Con I did terrible because these scientists, these PhDs, these engineers. Well, tell me more about your product. And me, Neanderthal college dropout, was like, does good. It does good. It mixes it in hard water and still does good. But yeah, we're trying to get into 5-star. And 5-star, they're good people. I have nothing against 5-star.
They've got a grasp on them.
They do. The whole don't fear the foam and good for them. I'm not bitter, whatever. But I only bring that story up because when I first started going to homebrew cons as someone on the trade show is when I really got to meet a lot of homebrewers and realize, oh my God, y'all are like the scale of Neanderthal to Einstein, where I know where I'm at on that scale. A lot of homebrewers are not. They're like extremely bright, intelligent, and put like you're describing this stuff. And I already know the feedback I'm going to get. People are going to be envious of the discipline and the work ethic you have. But let me bring it back to you. You're doing that because your goal is to make the best beer possible for your own consumption, not just to wow some judges who are going to be impressed.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say, why do you compete? I mean, all you're trying to do is trying to impress a judge somewhere. And that's not the case. Brew the beers you really like, because you only have to send off maybe a 6-pack, right, and the rest of it is yours. And it is like, it's hard for me to go into a liquor store and buy beer because it's usually like, I don't want that. You got any fresh German pills in here? And they usually don't.
I love that. And so we covered kind of the hot side and whatever. Fermentation, on that side of things, you weren't always doing it in Sankey kegs, but what kind of led you to using kegs as your fermentation vessel and what your process is? Because I know, spoiler guys, he's a pressure fermenter, and so you can include all of that, like how you got to the stage you're at now, because like you said, yeast and fermentation is a massive part of making good beer, if not the most important part, or one of the most important parts.
Yeah, so I ended up entering American lager of all things into into mash out. That's just was a big competition. It's no longer, but it was in Minneapolis. And Gordon Strong was actually a member of the St. Paul Homebrew Club, and he would come up and judge for that competition. So he turns out to be one of the judges that judged that American lager, and he came back scorching and said, "Oxidize." And I said, "Oxidize? What did I do?" I mean, I was so careful with it. And then that led me on probably about a 2 or 3 year journey trying to figure out, how do I minimize oxygen? And as I'm doing this, it kind of kept leading me to ferment in a keg, because then you could do a close transfer, right? So I decided I'm going to do one in a corny keg. I didn't like it because it only got about 3.5, 4 gallons out of it. I wanted 5 gallons. So I just went out and bought this Sankey keg, and I put 2 gas ports on the side, and then modified a 2-inch plug on top and put a gas port or a pressure relief port and then a gas or a liquid port off of it, and then took one of those floating dip tubes from Williams Brewing and just made that. So we went to a homebrew competition or a homebrew meeting at the local brewery, asked what they had, and they said they had a Helles. And I said, "I'll take that," And I tasted it, and I said, "This doesn't taste like anything like my beers," because my beers were fruity. And I said, "What kind of yeast did you use?" And it turns out that the server actually helped with that beer. He goes, "Oh yeah, we use 2124." And I tasted it again, and there wasn't a hint of fruit in it. And I was always struggling with fruit and oxygen in these lagers, because 2124 it's supposedly a Vastaphon yeast, and I think it is, and so is 3470,
Right.
the dry yeast. They're close to each other, but they're not the same. And I would always get the white grape, and the Pilsner would always have this Kolsch-like flavor to it that I wanted to get rid of. And every time you put it in a competition, they'd come back and say fruity, and they'd kick it out. And no matter how good the beer was, if it had any fruit in it, they kicked it out. So I turned around and looked at their fermenters, and they're 20 feet tall. And I says, "I know what it is. I'll bet you it's hydrostatic pressure." So I said, "Well, I'll just mimic that." So I actually looked at it, calculated what the pressure would be at the bottom of the cone. Turns out it's 7.5 psi. I said, "Well, I'll just ferment at 7.5 psi at lager temperatures." So that's what I did. So I did a Pilsner, first one. It went into mash out again, and it got a silver, and I was actually upset. I was there when they announced, and it's just got a silver.
Yeah.
That thing was so good.
Best beer I've ever brewed.
And so then at the same time, it was entered into Midwinter in Milwaukee, which is now defunct, and it won a gold and then won second best of show. And I says, "Well, now I'm on to things." And that would have been 2019, 2020. And I was ready for NHC. And this whole time I've been trying to win at NHC. And every time it would come up, it was either oxidized, it was too fruity, or there was always something wrong with it. And it always pointed toward fermentation. And so then when COVID hit, then I said, "Well, I'm just going to experiment." And I tried every yeast under the sun, under pressure. And I tried them mostly cold, and I even tried ale yeast, which I don't recommend putting that under pressure. But so I'm a little different than most pressure fermenters. I will pressure ferment at lager temperature. So 3470 is all 3 beers that won this year at NHC were done with fermenters 3470. And the 2 lagers were done at 50 to 52 degrees at 7.5 psi, and then they get spooned at the end. So you just kind of wait until they're almost done, and then you just start bringing the temperature up just a little bit, and then the pressure up to, it hits 25 psi at the very end. And but the cold IPA was done not at pressure. That was done with 3470. That one's got like 24% rice in it, minute rice. And the reason I don't pressure ferment that is because I tried it one time, and if you've ever dry hopped a carbonated beer, it is not fun. It just starts coming out. It was all over everywhere. It was like, oh, this is
It's
horrible.
terrible. Yeah.
Oh, it's
So-
if you just Google, go to YouTube and Google hop volcano.
Oh,
There's actually
It was-
one on there that's just
Yeah.
incredible. It just comes flying out. But the hops go in there and they nucleate the beer, and then then now there's a point for the CO2 to come out of solution, and it comes out like it's like Diet Coke and Mentos. It just comes out this terrible. So
That's
I don't
hilarious.
pressure ferment that. But what I do is when I dry hop, then I close the whole thing off. I put ALDC in it and a little bit of sodium or potassium metabisulfite into the beer as a dry hop, and then I close it up and spun it. And so that comes up to 25 psi. And a lot of times you can actually get your hop creep. If you're familiar with what hop creep is, you can use hop creep to actually carbonate the beer, and it works good.
How interesting. So do you have a walk-in somewhere behind the tractors and stuff? Like how you keep
do
stuff at lager
everything
temp?
with keezers. Everything with keezers.
Okay.
If people come by and look at where I brew and they say, this is where you brew, because it's like pretty, it's nasty. It's like, well, yeah, it's an old garage. That's where I do it at. Yeah.
It's not what I do for a living,
fancy.
guys. Yeah. This is a hobby still.
Yeah. And the thing is you can take most homebrewers can do a phenomenal job. I mean, I think those fermenters cost me $200 when I was done, as opposed to some of them are $800 for some of the fermenters. And the nice thing about the Sankey or doing it with a keg is that if you're doing it in a corny, you can bring it up to 125 psi if you want.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that. But on a Sankey, you can bring it up to 50 psi. So a lot of times when you're spunding at room temperature, it's really good to come up to 25 to 30 psi at the very end, and then you crash it, and there's no oxygen anywhere. So the goal is, when I got done doing this, the goal was to be able to bottle a beer with a Blickman gun and never have that beer touch oxygen until it gets poured in a glass. And how you do that is that you just purge that bottle really, really well. 30 seconds is usually what I do. And then hit it with a slightly overcarbonated beer. And then the beer starts coming up, and then the foam just starts coming up. And then you pull that wand out and she starts foaming out, and cap it as fast as you can. And that will actually keep the beer from being around any oxygen at all. And then, of course, you have little tricks like potassium metabisulfite is kind of your friend. You don't want to put too much in there because then you have to declare it. So you keep it the levels really low. So
and I think in the email chain we kind of cover this. Our buddy Adam, he's gonna have his own episode, but we're gonna bring y'all back because we're gonna do like a deep dive of your pressure fermentation. Because I know like some people listening are like, that's very different than what James and Josh say. Yeah, don't listen to us. Okay, we're not award winning. But no, it's just
everybody. People pressure ferment, but I don't think they really understand why they're doing it.
Oh, totally.
And, people, you get the impression that it's the pressure that's causing the yeast to change its behavior. It's not. The pressure is causing a secondary effect of dissolved CO2. That's really what you want. And so when you have a really tall fermenter, you're trapping CO2 at the bottom of that vessel. And as it churns, it comes up, but it doesn't have enough time to degas. It goes back down. And so when we pressure ferment at home, we're probably putting more CO2 in there than you would see in a conical, but we're getting the same effect. And it basically what it does is it causes the yeast to slow its metabolism, or its growth. It will change its metabolism, and it will steer more toward producing nothing but ethanol and CO2. And that's really what you're after on a lager. So that's why you need to understand, why are we doing it? We're doing it to get a really clean lager. When I do an English beer, I actually do it I ferment it in a keg too, but it's a squatty, really short, half or quarter barrel. And I tried to create as much surface area as I can to get the CO2 out of solution, because then you'll start creating these esters, these fruity esters that you want in an English beer or a Belgian or a wheat beer. You'd never put those under pressure. So it's a tool in your toolbox, but you don't use it every time. You wouldn't use a wrench to pound a nail.
Well, you say that, you've never met me, but you should see the tools. I'm over here with the video game controller. No, but I do have to remind people when I'm talking about pressure fermentation that I lied. The Japanese rice lager is the first lager of the year that we did that style. We brewed it under, injected 10 psi into it right when we put it in the fermenter after pitching, after putting oxygen in it first. I did it at 70 degrees in my office, and by dumb luck, it turned out good. But I have to remind people, it's mainly other beer, like the Kolsch I'm doing, believe it or not, and you can be grossed out, and we can dive into that at some other point too. The Kolsch, I don't inject pressure at first. I let it build up, but I'm still, again, I'm not doing anything special besides just what has been working for me, and we are still getting that nice, crisp, fruity finish Kolsch that we want, and I'm doing it at room temp, and it's been a godsend for me because I am cheap. I bought a Keyser out there, so I guess I could start, changing the Inkbird on it to being lager temps or whatever. But I'm lazy, and when we're brewing, we're using a plastic fermenter. Don't judge me on that too. But it's been a godsend for me to make good beer for us and our parties at room temp and brew all year long, as opposed to in the old days where it's like, dude, it's 100 outside, and I don't have the space for, how would I keep this down? How would I keep this Kolsch fermenting at, 64 or whatever? 68 is the high end of the yeast I use, Dieter from Imperial. It's a liquid yeast. And the high end of it is like 68. And I don't want my electric bill going through the roof for this month, whatever. Because again, I'm cheap. That's not a shtick. It's a reality.
That's what you can do with that. If you're doing something like that, you don't have to do what I do, but as long as you understand what's going on, you can manipulate that process to get what you're looking for, and it's all part of knowledge. Is really important when you're aiming for a target, and that's really what you're doing. You're aiming for a target. What am I going to hit it? And if you keep working at it, eventually you just start nailing it. And every time you just nail that target, it's so fun.
It's so fulfilling. I want to reiterate what you just said, because people don't hear that enough, and they don't take us serious. By us, I mean me. I project my feelings onto Todd and James, but really the feedback's about me. And I tell people, hearing you, a high performing brewer, say like, you don't have to do how I do it. Like, people can brew good beer in whatever process is working for them and continue doing that. And that's the beauty of homebrewing. It's not a one size fits all.
I get beat, and I ask them, how'd you do it? And I'll tell them how I did it, and they tell me how they did it. And I'm surprised how it's much simpler than what I do. It's like, well, maybe I'm overdoing this, but maybe not. I don't know. It works for me. You get so used to doing these processes that it's not that big a deal anymore. But when you first start doing them, it's overwhelming. It's like, I don't know if I can do this or not, And then pretty soon you're so accustomed to it, you just do it.
Exactly. Old dog, new tricks or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you kind of already answered my last question before I was able to get into your accolades and stuff. Last kind of tip, you'd mentioned the Blitman beer gun, one of my favorite products of all time, for packaging for people who are really interested in brewing. I think I know the answer already, but would you suggest to the first time competitor kegging their beer and bottling from the keg? Do you ever see a situation where bottle conditioning is appropriate for a style that's going off to be judged? I can't see one, but I'm not a competitor. I don't know.
I would say wheat beer, Belgian beer should be bottle conditioned. If you can't control your oxygen and you want to compete on a lager or something like that, there's nothing wrong with bottle conditioning, because you have a natural antioxidant in the beer itself, and that's the oxygen, or the yeast. The yeast will just scavenge the oxygen. However, I don't like doing that. I like kegging and bottling, because you can adjust your carbonation and just nail it, right? And I always over carbonate. I love carbonation.
Yeah. Especially lagers, that bite.
That bite's awesome. So you just slightly over carbonated. And then when I fill bottles, I don't just fill, if the competition requires 2, I don't just fill 2. I'll fill a 6-pack. I might fill 8. And I'll pick the 2 bottles or 3 bottles, whatever it is, that are the fullest. And what that does is you get smaller head space. There's less chance of oxygen getting in there. It keeps the carbonation high, because if you have a really long, or short pour in the bottle, you got to remember, you got to fill that area up with CO2, so it's going to pull some out of the beer itself. So I go through and then I save those, and I mentioned this on the AHA podcast, and then I set them aside, and then when the competition day comes, and I know they're judging them, I'll pop one and taste it. And, say, and that's when you say, "Oh, I think I'm in trouble." Oh no!
Oh no!
But the thing is that people can't fall in love with their own beer. You have to really be critical about it, and don't get too worried about what the judges said. That American lager that won Best of Show, it beat 2,500 beers, went into a competition in Illinois and didn't place out of 12 beers.
What?
And yes, and I got the sheets back, and I looked at it, I says, I don't know whose beer they were drinking, but it wasn't mine. Well, it turns out the certain competitions, and that varies from competition to competition, is that they like their beers a little heavier, and this one was a little on the light side. It was, crispy, delicious, very, very effervescent. He complained, the head judge complained that it was too light. It was too hoppy, which there was almost no hops in it, and he complained that it wasn't carbonated enough. So I kind of thought, well, maybe the judge is having kind of a bad day. But if they're going through a bunch of beers and you're the last one on that flight, you might get ripped when you don't need to be ripped, because they just want to finish the flight up, and then this is not that good. So there's a lot of luck in competitions. You need to be a consistently good brewer. You need to be lucky enough that you hit the judge that agrees with you with your interpretation of that style, and you're one of the first ones to get tasted, because that, in the judge's mind, they'll make a note of it. That one was really good. Set it aside. That's going to mini best of show, and then you get your scores, and people get, oh, my score was whatever. I don't care about scores. I want that beer to make it to mini best of show. And then now the judges have references to all these different beers, and they will taste them. And that's when the nuances of the beers will come out, because they'll just go through and keep tasting them. And then, they're side by side. And then if you're lucky enough, they say, this is number one, and that's yours. It's like, sweet.
This is why I love publishing. We used to be able to live stream. Then Todd out at his ranch got Starlink and the upload's not good enough. But I don't edit anything because I'm lazy. And I love, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong. If you're watching at youtube.com/homebrew happy hour, let me know, leave a hate comment. But people could come. I do believe we might be, that we do the Kolsch Cup. We've done that for 5 years now. And we had an alt competition. We're not doing it this year. It fell through, but I'd love to bring it back. I like either live streaming it or publishing all of it so that people can see. We're not BJCP. We're very clear about that. But I want people to I like the idea. If I were to enter a competition, I want to see the judges talking about it out loud. I want to see a conversation about the beer, for better or worse. They might go, oh my God, this Kolsch scent it tastes like piss. Okay, I can laugh at that, but I want to hear them. I like that idea, and not just for accountability. I think it's entertaining, but like to be able, because like you said, if you were watching that judge verbalize in front of a camera about your beer as you're drinking one at home from that batch, you'd probably be like, that guy, like, what is he talking about? And then
I don't judge. I've only judged a couple of times, but I do steward. And so it's really nice to be able to steward. And you'll hear some judges make a comment, this one's really bad. And then I'll go, I want to taste that one. And they'll say, this one's really good. I want to taste that one. I don't want to taste in between. I want to taste the worst and the best. And some of the best are phenomenal. And some of the bad are really bad. And it could be that something went wrong, and a lot of times the brewers are just looking for some feedback, and that's important. That if you're just getting started out, that feedback from the judge can be really important for you to improve it. But once you get rolling and you're getting to the level of the judge, you already know what's wrong with that beer when you set it
for
off.
Sure, of course, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you before we start before we kind of wrap it up with how you performed at the Nationals this year and all that. I know you use floating dip tubes. Are you
Yes.
familiar? I don't make any money off this, but Trong is a good friend of mine. Are you familiar with the Float It from Trong Win of Homebrewer Lab? Do you have any of those? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I don't know that they'll fit in a Sankey.
Oh, because I was going to say, well, do you want to try? I'll ship you one. If you
Sure.
Okay, I'll send you one.
Sure.
After this, you'll stay tuned. After I'm doing all the and thank you to our sponsors and all that. Just don't hang up on me.
It might be a game changer for me.
Well,
you never know.
Even if you don't use them there in your serving keg, you might see a huge difference. I don't know. I don't know your serving side. I have it on both. I use it for transferring from the fermenter. I use it on my serving keg too. I own way too many. I bought most of them. I stole some from Todd. That's neither here nor there. I might have to edit that part out because he listens. But that was a huge. That's been ever since I got the Float It maybe 2 years ago. It's been my perennial product of the year, and I really do. I'll send you one on the house and use it for your transferring.
Awesome.
And let me know. No, thank you for your time. I appreciate you doing the show because I don't pay my guest nothing. But let's talk about
now. I find out.
Yeah,
you know?
right. Yeah, Adam lied to you, buddy. Adam was like, "Oh, he takes care of his guests." NHC, this is obviously probably not the first time you've entered, but is this the best that you've performed? And then is Homebrewer of the Year accumulation of medals in the thing that got you there, or that got you the award, or how does it all work? And how were you expecting to perform in NHC?
So we kind of went through that. I didn't expect American Lager to do anything. And so that was the first category. And my son and I were sitting there listening to it. And when they said third place, they announced third place. I looked at him. I says, well, our odds are going down. And then they announced second place. And I says, well, there's only one left. And I'll be darned. It was that American Lager. So the Homebrew of the Year is actually best of show. So the American Lager actually won best of show. So there's, I believe, 3 judges, and it's almost always Gordon Strong on that table. And he's a very good judge and not afraid to rip it. And I like that. I like it when people rip my beers, because then I learn, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times it just reaffirms what you already knew. Or maybe it revealed something you didn't know, like your beer's oxidated. Well, I didn't even know that. So anyway, we were sitting there listening to that, and I says, you know what? I looked at him. I says, we're on, because that was my worst beer. And what I really wanted to win with was that German Pils. That Pils, to me, if you win a gold at NHC with a Pils, that's the pinnacle.
You're the man. Yeah.
It's like weird. It's like, I'm the guy, because I had been working on that beer for probably, it's getting close to 10 years. You're just trying to hone it and hone it and hone it. And so when they announced that one gold, then the cold IPA was coming up, and I knew the cold IPA was a really strong beer. It was a really good one. And that one, specialty IPA, won a gold. So I text my friend, Tim Rhodes, who's watching with me, and I says, I think I just won Ninkasi. So Ninkasi is where you win the most points. But it turns out Tyler Miller, who it was kind of weird, because Tyler Miller and I have a mutual friend, Sean and Emily Kemshaw, and they were texting back and forth with Tyler, and and Sean was texting back with Tim, and they're going back and forth, and they're watching the two of us compete for that Ninkasi. And it turns out I lost Ninkasi by 2 points. I won 18 points. So it's got to be a record for the most points and still lose Ninkasi. So 20 points. The only one that's ever gotten that I can find was Gordon Strong got it, I think, in 2011. He got 20 points. But hats off to Tyler Miller, because he pulled off 20 points. He won 5 medals. So 1 gold, I think. What was it? 1 gold, 3 silvers, and I think a bronze. So I entered 4 beers. I ended up with 3 golds. So that's 75% got gold. Plus I got best of show.
What was that 4th that you entered that didn't place?
Only one that didn't place was International Lager. And that was the one I was kind of playing around with the yeast. I used frozen yeast, and I shouldn't have done it. It came off with this nutty character that just, it was weird.
But if you just could have anyone ever taken Ninkasi and Homebrewer of the Year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's pretty common, I would assume, I guess.
No, it's not common, but it does happen every now and then. It used to be that if you got 2 golds, you got Ninkasi. I mean, that's how tough it was. But this year was just brutal between Tyler Miller and myself. But the only time I've done better than that was last year at the Minnesota State Fair. So they have Minkazi as opposed to Ninkasi. So Minnesota State Fair only allows Minnesota brewers in there. So I entered 6 beers in 7 categories. I ended up winning 7 medals. I won Minkazi, and then I won Best of Show. And it was like, I'll never, ever top that record. That's 150%.
Yeah, no kidding.
Beers. Yeah. So it was, I don't know, this last year or two, I've just been on fire. And, I might disappear. I mean, never see me again, because 2024, I didn't win anything in nationals. In 2021, I won 2 silvers. 2022, I won a silver for the Linz Lager. And then in 2023, I won for an international lager. But the Pilsner never hit. It always made it through to the finals, but it never did anything on the finals. So this year, that was the one I really, really wanted to win with. And I'm really proud of that beer. So then my daughter had a wedding just a weekend and a half.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So before we won, she goes, Dad, can you brew the beer? I kind of offered, and I says, well, let's make a beer. So we picked the beers that I was going to brew, and every one of them won a medal at NHC. And we ended up going through about 20 gallons of beer that night. And the cold IPA and Linz, I made a Linny's Light, and that, there are a lot of Coors Light drinkers in there, and they killed those kegs.
Dude, were you peacocking around too? Like,
well, my wife says, well, now's your time to brag. So we put all my medals up near the bar, and says, oh, this is, Homebrew of the Year. And it was just like a complete accident. It wasn't like, it looked like it was planned, but it was just an accident. It's like,
yeah. Again, I'm going to steal all this without the actual accolades. I'm going to put all my fake trophies at my daughter, and they're going to drink this horse piss and be like, wait, who's judging?
One.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's
you bet it did.
That's global championship level. How dare you? How I real quick, digressing a little. I call the Kolsch Cup. Well, it started with we have an alt beer competition called the Alt Pokal, and some pedantic Germans were like, "How dare you do this? It's our style." Da, da, da. And so I started calling it the Alt Beer World Championship, and I started calling it the Kolsch World. Oh nobody writes hate email like pedantic Germans. I love it.
I'd do it.
They're my favorite people to troll. Actually, my wife's my favorite person to troll, but all people. If you can't have fun, I can call it whatever I want. I'm American, man. This is the World Championships for Kolsch. One thing I do want to ask you, and I keep saying before I wrap it up, and if you got to go, I understand.
No, that's fine. I got time.
I know people who listen to the show, a good chunk of our audience, any given week, that reach out to me are new people, and poor people, they find our podcast when they Google search homebrewing, so they're stuck with us. But one of the things they always ask is, man, should I look into a homebrew club around me? Like, do you think there's a benefit to that? And I always direct them, yes. Like, my pop and I brew together. We don't have a formal club, but the camaraderie that we have formed, he's become one of my best friends as an adult. Just that alone is worth it. But I imagine really involved homebrew clubs like what y'all got going on up there at Big Lake, the feedback you just get from other craft beer enthusiasts is invaluable to a competitor like yourself.
So you end up learning by accident. I mean, you go to a homebrew club, and we went to one last night, and there was beers that I have, a Belgian that was like attenuated, like crazy below 1. And I tasted it, and it was really good. And it was a yeast using an enzyme. I don't remember what yeast it was, but it had an enzyme in it to help attenuate it even more. And it's surprising how well the people in the club really brew beer, because you taste this beer and they're kind of coming, why don't you try this beer? And some of it is really, really good. Some still needs work, but what I don't want to do is create a situation where you have to granted, I've won a lot of medals, almost 200, and I don't want to have people come and kiss my ring. I don't like that.
I do. What?
I don't.
How dare you be humble on my podcast?
To encourage people, and I'll tell them whatever I need to, whatever they want to know, how to go about doing this. But if you have listeners that are just starting out, I highly recommend starting out with extract, sticking strictly with RO or distilled water and dry yeast, and see where it goes, because that circumvents a lot of the mistakes I made, because I was making mistake after mistake. And I really didn't enter or join a homebrew club until Tim Rhodes, a friend of mine, says, you need to join a homebrew club. And then I got introduced to all these other styles I didn't know, all these other techniques I didn't know anything about. And it's like learning with a fire hose almost. And then I ended up quitting that club because it was too far away, and I ended up coming up here to River City Brewers. And it's I mean, we have judges in the club. I'm not a judge, and we have everything from novice brewers to really good brewers, and not all of them compete, and but they're still great beer. And I always say you should compete with that. You could win something with it, but
I love it. Yeah, like I said, I think a club can keep someone in the hobby in a healthy way, and through encouragement, through community. The best part about beer, whether you're brewing it or you're buying it, is sharing it. Like having a beer by myself just makes me look like an alcoholic. But the second my pop is in the garage with me, oh, it's camaraderie, it's team building. Now, kidding aside, that's the best part of this hobby is the community. And
that's so cool that you're brewing with your dad, because my son will occasionally brew with me, but he's more interested in the beer than he is in the process.
Listen, Wayne, don't give me any credit. I need someone to janitorial, okay? I need clean. We brew on a Grainfather, the G40. It's it can do 10-gallon batches all in one. That thing gets messy. My fingers, I don't know if you can tell there, my hands are not calloused. I'm not a working man. My father's over there scrubbing, son, is this okay? Yeah, Pop, keep going. I'm smoking a cigar. A beer. You're doing good.
Give me a beer too, would you? Like to get that clean in that.
Hey, Pop, come on. What are we doing over there? I'm kidding. But yeah, back to my main point of community from beer is my favorite thing. Sharing a beer and a cigar with a friend is where it's at. I love it.
And to get back to what Adam really drives that club, and to his credit, he got us involved in a project called Brew for Good, and where we can brew beer and it's served to the public. You can't sell beer, but you can take donations. It goes to a local charity, and people get to go around and vote for the best beer. And last year, Adam won Alpha King. So he won top place for Alpha King, and I ended up winning People's Choice. So our club walked away from there with everything, and it was like we just destroyed that.
You swept it.
I almost felt bad because we beat everybody so bad. But, it was so fun to sit there and give a beer to just a stranger and say, "Here's my beer, taste it. I'm really proud of it." And the looks on people's faces most of the time was like, "You made this at home?" I said, "Yeah, I made this at home. This is awesome." So that's part of the joy of home brewing. I don't know. It's like cooking, right? You get into cooking or bread making or whatever, and why would you ever do it for yourself? You want to do it for others,
Absolutely. I love that. And I sincerely appreciate your time coming on the show. You will be on in the future. Pardon me. I should have asked that, not told. You will be on. No, I'm okay
with that.
I have the receipts. You said you would.
This is fun.
Yeah. And like I said, and getting Adam on, and when I have Adam on, that's where I'm going to elaborate on the club thing. Because it's been lately, we've been doing the show for 10 years. And over time, there's waves of similar questions. And this year has really been a new people dipping their toes in kind of year. And hey, what do you think about homebrew clubs? And I think having a very involved president of a homebrew club would be perfect to help kind of guide people through, the benefits of being in a club and a community, and how that can help make you a better brewer. It can help you, get critical feedback that unless you're a competitor, you're not going to get. You know how many times I worry when I serve my beer that my friends are just saying it's good because they like me?
They do that because it's free, right?
Yeah,
Free beer is always better
beer's
beer.
always good beer. So
Yeah.
when you have even in a club that become your friends, they're probably going to be brutally honest with you because they do the same thing you're doing. They brew.
You don't have to be a dick about it.
Yeah.
You just say, look, this is you've got a really good a lot of times you just say, you got a really good foundation here. You
Yeah.
just need to tweak a few things,
Yep, exactly.
And you get that from experienced brewers who have made the same mistakes you have made. And they're helping you out of a rut there. You need to come out of that rut. And sometimes, brewers are happy with their beer. Well, that's fine.
Exactly. C'est la vie, as I've said.
Yeah.
Wayne, my friend, thank you so much for doing the show. I appreciate your time. And like I said, we'll have you on in the future.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, of course, you could go to homebrewhappyhour.com. Of course, you could email joshua@homebrewhappyhour.com. But even better, call it in 325-305-6107. Get yourself that gift card to kegconnection.com. Thank you to our show sponsors like Muntins Malt, premium grains for a better brew day. If you aren't already using Muntins, give them a try by joining the Trub Club at a recipe receiving level. For the best hops available online, give our friends at hopsdirect.com a visit and pick up what you need for your next brew day. Also, get a pack of premium liquid imperial yeast along with delicious recipes from us when you join the Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us. Again, a huge thank you to our sponsors. A huge thank you to every member of the Trub Club. I'm Joshua Stubing. Thanks for listening.